The billionaire froze in the middle of her vineyard when she spotted a man asleep beneath the oldest grapevine on the estate. His little daughter was curled against his shoulder, wrapped in an oversized jacket that clearly belonged to him. Their shoes were covered with dust, their faces carried the exhaustion of countless sleepless nights, and beside them rested nothing but a faded backpack. At first, she thought they were trespassers. But when the first rays of dawn reached the hillside, the little girl quietly woke up and gently covered her father's face with her tiny sweater so the morning sun wouldn't disturb his sleep. It was such a simple act of love that it stopped the billionaire in her tracks. She had spent years building an empire worth billions, yet she had never witnessed a richer moment than a child protecting the only parent she had left. Minutes later, the father noticed strange markings carved into an ancient stone wall near the vineyard's oldest vines. Curious, he brushed away decades of dirt, unknowingly revealing the first clue to a forgotten secret that would soon be valued at more than $40 million. Ethan Brooks had never imagined that life could change so quickly. Just 3 years earlier he had owned a modest construction company, a comfortable home, and dreams big enough for himself and his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Then tragedy arrived without warning. His wife passed away after a sudden illness, leaving Ethan to raise Lily alone while drowning in grief. The emotional weight became unbearable, and the business slowly collapsed under mounting debt. Clients disappeared. Employees found other work. The bank eventually repossessed almost everything he had worked for. What remained fit inside one worn backpack and the aging pickup truck that had finally broken down hundreds of miles from the nearest city. Ethan refused to let Lily see how frightened he truly was. Every morning he invented little adventures to make their difficult journey feel exciting. Some days they explored forests. Other days they watched sunsets from abandoned roadsides. Lily believed they were traveling because her father loved discovering new places together. She never realized that many nights they simply had nowhere else to go. For nearly 2 weeks they searched for work in small towns scattered across California's wine country. Ethan accepted any temporary labor he could find. He repaired fences, cleaned barns, carried heavy equipment, and harvested fruit whenever someone offered a day's pay. Most employers admired his work ethic but admitted they couldn't afford permanent help. Every evening he thanked them politely before continuing down another lonely road with Lily asleep beside him. One afternoon the old pickup finally gave up. Steam poured from beneath the hood, and the engine died forever on a quiet country road surrounded by endless vineyards. Ethan checked his wallet. After buying food for Lily that morning, he had less than $20 left. A tow truck was impossible. A motel was impossible. Even another bus ticket seemed out of reach. They walked for hours until the sun disappeared behind rolling hills covered with grapevines. At the edge of one magnificent estate stood an ancient oak tree overlooking rows of perfectly maintained vines stretching toward the horizon. Believing the land was abandoned for the night, Ethan spread an old blanket beneath the tree and helped Lily fall asleep. He promised her everything would somehow be better tomorrow. The estate belonged to Victoria Sinclair, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in America. After transforming her family's struggling vineyard into a luxury international wine company, magazines praised her business genius while investors admired her relentless determination. Yet behind the glamorous headlines lived a woman carrying invisible scars. She had lost both parents before turning 30 and had devoted every waking hour to protecting the vineyard they loved. Success surrounded her, but loneliness had quietly become her closest companion. Victoria had developed a habit of walking through the vineyard before sunrise every morning. It reminded her of childhood when her father taught her how every vine told a story if someone cared enough to listen. That morning she expected silence, but instead she discovered Ethan and Lily sleeping peacefully beneath the old oak. Security guards wanted to remove them immediately, yet Victoria stopped them with a raised hand. She noticed Ethan's rough hands, the patched knees of his jeans, and the careful way he had positioned himself between Lily and the cold ground. Even while asleep, he was protecting his daughter. Rather than calling the police, Victoria instructed the staff to prepare breakfast at the guest cottage nearby. She decided that once the father woke, she would offer him a meal and ask him to leave peacefully. It seemed like the kindest solution. As dawn brightened the valley, Ethan awoke in embarrassment. Realizing they had spent the night on private property, he apologized repeatedly and gathered their few belongings. Before he could leave, Victoria surprised him by inviting both him and Lily to breakfast. Lily's eyes widened at the sight of warm pancakes, fresh fruit, and hot chocolate. Ethan hesitated, ashamed to accept charity, but hunger finally defeated pride. Watching Lily smile for the first time in days reminded him that accepting kindness was sometimes another way of protecting his child. During breakfast, Victoria learned pieces of Ethan's story. She noticed he never complained about losing his business or his home. Instead, every answer somehow returned to Lily. His greatest fear wasn't being homeless. It was disappointing the little girl who still believed he could solve every problem. Victoria offered Ethan temporary work repairing old stone walls damaged during winter storms. The pay wasn't extraordinary, but it included a small room in the workers' cottage where he and Lily could stay safely until he found something more permanent. For Ethan, it felt like a miracle. The following morning he began rebuilding one of the oldest retaining walls deep inside the vineyard. Unlike most workers who hurried through repairs, Ethan carefully studied every stone before moving it. Years in construction had taught him that old structures often carried hidden history. While clearing thick vines from one forgotten corner of the property, he noticed several stones engraved with unusual symbols almost completely hidden beneath layers of moss. They didn't resemble ordinary construction marks. Their pattern appeared deliberate, almost like directions left behind by someone generations earlier. Curiosity overcame exhaustion. As Ethan removed another heavy stone, he discovered a narrow iron box sealed beneath the wall. Inside rested brittle maps, handwritten journals, faded property records, and a strange brass key unlike anything he had ever seen. Without realizing it, the struggling single father had just uncovered the first piece of a mystery buried for nearly 70 years, a mystery connected to Victoria's family and a forgotten fortune that experts would later value at more than $40 million. Standing alone beneath the morning sun, Ethan stared at the weathered documents, unaware that this discovery was about to transform not only his own future, but the destiny of everyone connected to the vineyard. Ethan stood silently beneath the ancient vines, holding the weathered iron box with both hands. Years of dirt covered its surface, yet the documents inside had remained almost perfectly preserved. He knew enough about construction to recognize that whoever had hidden the box had intended for it to remain undiscovered. Instead of opening everything by himself, he carefully carried it to Victoria's office. Many people in his position would have secretly sold the documents or searched for the treasure alone, hoping to escape poverty overnight. Ethan never considered that path. His daughter had taught him that doing the right thing mattered even when no one was watching. Victoria looked up from her desk, expecting another update about the stone wall repairs. Instead, Ethan gently placed the iron box before her. As she unfolded the first brittle map, the color slowly disappeared from her face. The Sinclair family crest appeared on several pages, along with handwritten notes signed by her great-grandfather nearly 70 years earlier. The journals described a forgotten section of the estate that had never appeared on modern property records. During difficult financial times after the Second World War, valuable land and mineral rights had been quietly hidden inside a legal trust to protect the family from bankruptcy. Only a coded map could reveal the exact location of the documents proving ownership. Victoria immediately contacted historians, surveyors, and property attorneys. Over the next several days, experts examined every page. What initially looked like old family records soon revealed something astonishing. The forgotten trust still legally existed. Because no one had claimed or dissolved it, the estate retained ownership of a vast piece of land that had dramatically increased in value over decades. The property included rare underground water rights, untouched vineyards, and several neighboring parcels that together were now estimated to be worth more than $40 million. News spread quietly among the legal team, but Victoria ordered complete privacy until every document had been verified. She never wanted Ethan or Lily surrounded by reporters or people interested only in money. Watching Ethan continue repairing walls every morning as though nothing extraordinary had happened only deepened her respect for him. Despite discovering the secret that changed everything, he still showed up before sunrise, worked until sunset, and spent every evening helping Lily read storybooks on the cottage porch. One afternoon Victoria asked herself a question she could no longer ignore. If Ethan had wanted wealth, he could have disappeared with those documents before anyone knew they existed. Instead, he had chosen honesty over opportunity. In a world where greed seemed ordinary, his integrity felt almost impossible. As the legal process moved forward, Victoria began learning more about Ethan's past. Former employees described him as a fair businessman who always paid workers before paying himself. Old clients remembered how he repaired homes for struggling families without charging labor costs. Even after losing everything, no one could remember him blaming others for his hardships. The deeper she looked into his life, the clearer it became that poverty had changed his circumstances but never his character. Meanwhile, Lily slowly transformed the atmosphere around the vineyard. Workers who rarely smiled found themselves laughing whenever she wandered through the rows of grapes asking endless questions about nature. She learned every employee's name within a week. She left little drawings on lunch tables thanking people for being kind to her father. Even Victoria, whose life had become consumed by business meetings and financial reports, began taking evening walks with Lily through the vineyard. For the first time in years, the estate felt less like a corporation and more like a home. Several weeks later, the legal verification was finally complete. Every signature, every map, and every record proved authentic. The forgotten trust belonged to the Sinclair estate exactly as Ethan's discovery had suggested. Financial advisors celebrated what newspapers would later call one of the most remarkable property recoveries in California's history. Victoria organized a gathering for every employee working at the vineyard. Most expected an announcement about the newly recovered land. Instead, she invited Ethan to stand beside her. She spoke not about wealth, but about honesty. She reminded everyone that fortunes can be built through business, but trust is built through character. Then she revealed something no one expected. She announced that Ethan would become the estate's Director of Restoration and Heritage Preservation, responsible for protecting every historic structure across the property. Along with the position came a generous salary, full benefits, and complete educational support for Lily until she graduated from college. Finally, she handed Ethan an envelope containing a substantial financial gift. Not as payment for finding the documents, but as gratitude for choosing integrity when no one could have forced him to. For several long seconds, Ethan couldn't speak. He thought about every cold night inside the broken truck, every rejected job application, every moment he had secretly wondered whether life would ever become easier for Lily. None of those painful memories disappeared, but they no longer controlled his future. Months passed, and the vineyard entered a new chapter. Part of the recovered land was transformed into a community center offering job training, temporary housing, and childcare for struggling single parents searching for a second chance. Victoria insisted that success meant little unless it created opportunities for others. Ethan helped oversee the construction himself, remembering exactly how hopeless life had once felt when all he needed was one person willing to believe in him. Lily often stood beside the entrance welcoming new families. Whenever frightened children arrived holding their parents' hands, she smiled and told them they were safe now. She understood their fear because she had lived it herself. Years later, visitors touring the vineyard often admired the beautiful landscape without realizing that one quiet corner held the story that changed countless lives. Beneath the oldest grapevine remained a simple wooden bench with a small bronze plaque. It didn't mention $40 million. It didn't celebrate business success. Instead, it carried a single message. The greatest treasures are discovered by people who refuse to lose their humanity, even after life has taken everything else. Many guests paused there without knowing why the words felt so powerful. Those who knew the story understood that the real miracle had never been the hidden fortune. The greatest discovery was the kindness that one struggling father chose over desperation, and the compassion that one lonely billionaire chose over judgment. If this story touched your heart, let us know what moment stayed with you the most in the comments. As Ethan watched Lily run laughing through the vineyard that had once been only a place to sleep for a single desperate night, he finally understood that hope rarely arrives with noise. Sometimes it appears quietly at sunrise, hidden beneath old stones, waiting for someone with an honest heart to uncover it.